All right. So I know a lot's been made about, the removal of commission advertisement from real comp and, some people are freaking out about it, some people don't really care. So like let's actually hear from a top producer and what you're actually experiencing in the field. So like since last Thursday, I think, or last Wednesday when they took it off, what changes, if anything, have you noticed and how has it impacted your business?
It has changed. I get a lot of questions about it. Um,
Okay.
and to answer those questions, it's different. If you're, talking to a buyer, talking to a seller, with my buyers, I have to let them know up front that there is the opportunity for them to possibly have to bring something to the table. Um, because the risk is if I get them into a house that they love and this seller is not offering that, I don't get paid selfishly, so I make sure up front that they're aware of that. I haven't had any pushback because I haven't had to really use it yet. I
Okay.
haven't had a seller yet where I've shown the home and they haven't been willing to pay. So, but it's definitely a conversation on every client that I go out on. I almost bring it up so that you know, it's not them curious and me not answering the questions. I bring it up, get it out of the way.
When do you typically bring that up at the initial consult?
Yes, because there is going to be a form that we're going to start getting signed to that effect. Obviously, there's been some changes to a few of our forms, and it's so important because I certainly want to protect my buyers, but I also have to protect myself. And unfortunately, if we're getting sellers that are giving pushback on that, I got to know up front. I can't show them three houses and then say, "Oh, by the way."
Right.
So pretty quick up
Okay.
front.
And now, so on the buy side, how are you getting a hold of agents? When are you doing it to find out what they're offering for commission?
That's been interesting because I'm getting it a lot on my listings too. All of a
Hmm.
sudden it's shifted, but I do it before I ever book the appointment because again, I have to kind of prepare. So I will either text them, call them, whatever is appropriate for that situation and ask them up front. I haven't had any pushback on it yet. I think we're all in the same boat. So everybody's getting calls and texts and it's going to get exhausting at some point, so there's going to have to be a different way to handle it. But for the moment, just finding out right up front. And then it also then helps me if I do have to go to a buyer to say,
Hmm.
this seller's offering 2%. I'm going to ask that you bring the other 1%. So
Have you had any sellers of your own be hesitant or not willing to offer out compensation since any of this has happened?
yeah, I actually had a couple new listings that came up. And one in particular, I was a little surprised because I've sold homes for them before. But they did ask me about it and asked me what that flexibility and wiggle room looked like.
Hmm.
I, for me, and I'm sure most people are doing the same thing. I hope they are at least. I am offering this 3% to bring you the most qualified, best, strongest buyer that's going to get to the closing table. So if I can't offer that, I can't guarantee every other agent's going to handle this buyer situation the same as I am. So I want to offer them the max. I want to give them what they deserve for their time. And so that's how I present it to my sellers too.
Okay, so you said you've only had a couple people push back on it. Everyone's kind of been on page with that.
Yeah, but it's new, right? Because
Right.
what I would say previously when this whole thing started is I would tell them that's not coming till August. That's down the road. And then we moved on. Now it's
Yeah.
here. So now
Yeah.
I'm starting to get conversations where people are understanding, wait a minute here. There's something to discuss, but I have to make sure they understand the implications of not giving that money.
Yeah. And I don't know if you saw this, but Ricky Caruth posted something a couple days ago about the EXP CEO or something came out and said that after August 17th or whatever, that their own agents aren't allowed to offer out any buyer compensation. I don't
I
know
did
if it's
not see
true, but yeah, that's what Ricky Caruth posted. So I don't know how accurate it is, but if that is true, I mean, you want to talk about taking your own company. I mean, that's like, what's your reaction to that?
that's alarming actually. I don't know how do you do that?
I don't know.
So you're saying to me they're not going to pay out buyer compensation?
Really, that's what Ricky Caruth said. So again, I'm
You
assuming it's
know
still
what?
speculation.
Well, and you know what that does for me? And I have some wonderful EXP agents that I work with. that
Mhm.
I've partnered with, and that makes me not want to work with them. Not even
Yeah,
because of the money, but because of
yeah,
the what it's doing to our industry. So that
principles.
to me is my first. That would be my first red flag for sure.
Yeah. So, I
That's
mean, that's just,
disappointing.
as this continues to roll out, there's going to be stuff that's going to happen in the marketplace. I think that's completely asinine, but we'll see if it's even true.
Yeah.
That's just what I saw. So I don't know. But so, all right, we've handled commission, handling buyers and the sellers on both sides. What are you currently seeing out there in the marketplace? I mean, is it swinging to more of a balanced market? Are you still competing with multiple offers? Like, where are we at?
Definitely a shift. Definitely a shift. Not so many multiple offers, but in some cases, still multiple offers.
Hmm.
Um, Interesting thing is inventory is still low,
Yeah.
but houses aren't moving as quickly. So I'm seeing sellers that I'm having to go back and discuss again. Hey, when we talked in May and you were getting ready to list, that was then. And now we're here and this is now. So we're in a different place. And in fact, I have one particular client that we're really going through it. So she, the timing just didn't work for the time frame that she wanted. And in this case, now we're having to have a different conversation about not even the price point. That is one factor, but also the timeline, you know.
Yeah.
So I definitely am seeing that shift. It's not only in sellers, but even in buyers. My buyers right now, they have a lot more time to think. It's not as aggressive. Now, obviously, I don't want them to do that because I want them to make a decision and let's move forward and let's go. But it definitely has changed, some things. And the only thing I caution buyers on with that is don't wait too long. Now they think that they're comfortable and they can take 3 days to think about something. Not going to happen. So
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
a weird
And
time.
so, yeah, it is kind of weird too. And so, like, the market always trails behind, right? So it's hard for those comps to show that shifted market until three,
Right.
6, 9 months down the road. So how are you kind of going through comps and preparing and educating your sellers that we are in a shifted market when the comps really haven't shown up to justify it yet?
Such a good question. Oh my gosh. Because for me, it's so hard because I have to prove it, right? And
Yeah.
I don't give
Yep.
them their I don't give them their sales number. I don't give it to them. You know this. There's this process I follow, but if I have to pull comps out and they're seeing 500,000 and I'm saying it's probably closer to 475, 450, they're looking at what I have in front of me. And I
Right.
have to then go back and tell them that historically, when we go through an election time and we had such a high market, it is naturally going to decrease. So I kind of have to have them just trust me, but it's hard because it does. I mean, when I look at it on paper, I'm like, oh, you should get $1 million for this house, but it it's not panning out that way. And that's what's happening right now with some of these people that are sitting on the market. Like I said, we had this conversation in May. Those comps
Hmm.
haven't really changed.
Right.
They're starting to close. These closings are starting to happen, but the comps, if I pull them, are still the same ones that we had, you know, during that time.
Are you finding yourself having to do more price adjustment conversations and appointments now than you were, 3, 6, 12 months ago?
Absolutely. Yeah. What's hard about it too is when I think about it, some of the clients that I'm working with currently, they've been thinking about this for a long time. So they've been
Sure.
watching this market and they're saying, all right, we're going to do it. We're going to sell at the peak of the market. Well, this is not, in my opinion, necessarily the peak of the market. So when they looked at it 6 months ago and said, we want 500,000 for this house, that's our bottom line, no matter what. And we're not getting that activity and we're not getting offers that portray that. That's where I'm having to sit down with them and say, hey, remember when we talked that as we get closer to election times, we're going to see some things change. Well, we're here. And so that number that we thought back then might be viable is proving not to be because it's the market that tells us. If I'm not getting buyers in the door, or I'm getting buyers in the door and not getting the offers that I like, I can't change that. That's the market, speaking for itself. So it's tough right now.
Are you So are you getting pushback when you're, like you said, you're showing comps and it may show 500,000, but they're, you're you're kind of leading them towards 475. Are you getting pushback from the sellers on that? And how do you justify, that number without really having the data to back it up yet?
So definitely getting pushback. I think probably everybody is. I mean, it's hard to look at a number on paper and say, no, I want that. And it makes sense. In a normal world, that when we had those markets where that's easy. How I'm handling that, if this home is worth that 500,000 and I'm telling you 475, you're going to have multiple offers and you're probably still going to get that 500,000. But the other side of it is, if you put it up at an aggressive price point and now it's sitting on the market and the activity is slow, it starts to dilute the listing a little bit. That is much more deadly than going for a little bit lower price point and having hopefully multiple offers or a lot of interest where we can negotiate stronger. So, but yeah, that's a tough one.
Are you having the majority of your price adjustment conversations via phone? Or are you going back out there to meet with them in person? I mean, how do you go about actually getting the adjustment?
I usually do it by phone.
Okay.
If I have a client that prefers in person, I will definitely do that. But typically when I'm ready to have that conversation, I've kind of prepped them for it. I've kind of said, hey, in a couple weeks, when if we're not having the activity or we're not getting any offers, we're probably going to have a chat. So they're prepared that, I don't like to make the phone call because I know it's heartbreaking to the seller, but at the same time, my job is to sell houses, not list them. So,
exactly.
So I'm like, for my expertise, you hired me for that. And I don't even say, I think you need to do this. What I say is, we're in a place where this number is not working. So we need to talk together and figure out what might be the next step that makes sense. I'm not dropping a house $2,000. Sorry. I'm not even dropping a house $5,000 in most cases, because that to me is going to have no bearing on getting more activity. So if I'm talking a price adjustment, typically I'm going in aggressive so that we can get results quicker.
Yeah. Well, to your point, if someone thought it was worth $5,000 less or $10,000 less, then you would have got an offer for that number.
Right. But it's always fun to explain that to the seller. That's like, nope, just five, five. I'm like, that's not going to get it done.
So those are definitely some skills and conversations we have to brush up on, because now they're relevant in the market again. So, okay, that's what's going on in the market. A lot of questions I get from agents that I work with, always, many about you, but one of the big ones they get is, how did you go from, $400,000 market to the luxury market that you're in now, 2 million plus? I mean, was that like a gradual transition to you? How did you actually break into that luxury market?
The funny thing is, I can pick portions of it, but how it actually really came to be, I don't know. I will say this. I grind pretty hard for work. I grind for my clients. I really do. And that gets around. So that word of mouth, that level of respect, I guess, in the community gets around. And then I did, start to tap into some of the luxury. I got my luxury certification, which doesn't sound like a big deal, just sounds like a certification, but it gave me comfort to know that I can handle these bigger clients. So when I do get them, I know how to handle them out of the gate. And once you've done a few of them, people start to see that. They start to see where your average sales price is or your numbers. And sometimes I even get from people, you don't want to list my $200,000 house. I'm like, oh, yes, I do. Yeah, those are my favorite ones to list, because they see that luxury number. And so it's out there. And obviously we all are big in social media, talk, word of mouth, things like that. So when they see those out there, it starts to give you that image. The key is, though, you have to be able to live up to that image. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know the questions they're going to ask. I just showed a very, very, very nice luxury home last week. And the first question that came out of the gentleman's mouth was, what kind of windows are these? And we weren't even at the door yet. The next question was, when the architect built it, or when the architect gave the builder these, what modifications were made? So do you have the full architectural plan for me to look at? And if you freeze on
It's over.
something like, it's over. When they're asking that level of questions, you have to know what you're talking about, or at least find a way to get out of that conversation and get them an answer.
Mm.
But that's just, so there's a different level there in that regard. So yeah, it's really it's a practice thing. You really have to study what luxury is. And it's awesome, but luxury is a completely different animal. It's a
Yeah.
completely different animal. Good and bad,
Yeah.
as you know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it sounds like really just the level of customer service that you're offering spread via word of mouth, and people saw that you were busy doing what you were doing, that people took notice of that, and you got one, and then the rest started to fall.
Yeah, and you know what? It's the other thing is to go seek them out.
Hmm.
Don't be scared. It's funny when I hold call out every week in my office, and we'll get a FISBO, and it'll be a $900,000 FISBO, and everybody's afraid to call it. And I'm like, no, call it. That's how you break in. And you don't know what's happening on the other end if you don't ask. So that could be the switch right there. Just one of those. And then you market it like crazy. You
Hmm.
know, market the hell out of it, because that's the factor that's really going to get people like, wow, I hear this all the time. That house you listed, wow, this one, I can't believe it. That thing's beautiful. And so when you start to get that going, then you're the first person people think of then. So
So I know, when we made that process and you made that shift into luxury and you started handling more properties, I know one of the biggest challenges was that shift in mindset, like you were just talking about, right? Like going from 3 to 400,000 to 2 million. It's like, oh my gosh, am I prepared for this? Can I really do it? What do I need to know? So, speaking from your personal experience, what advice would you give to an agent to help them overcome that mental barrier?
it's hard. It's no joke. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, because it took me a lot of time to build my confidence. Um, I can fake it a little bit when I need to, but for the most part, you have to really have that confidence when you're walking into these rooms and these homes and things like that. I would say, honestly, I've dealt with other luxury agents and kind of watched what they do. So, for example, I have an agent in Rochester that I did a deal with, but I watched his process and it was so smooth. He was very knowledgeable. He knew what he was doing. And I said, that's what I have to do. I got to know every little detail about this house or these luxury things in order to be the expert. So when I walk into a listing appointment, if it is a luxury property, I know what I'm talking about. And so it takes homework. It takes practice. It takes, you being in front of the right crowds too. I also will say, surround yourself with people that want that too, because if you don't, and you go down that rabbit hole, you start to get that negative or maybe intimidated feeling,
Hmm.
and that's the kiss of death. So,
Yeah.
sure.
No reason to be intimidated by anything or anyone, right?
Right, right.
So,
That's what you said.
yeah. Well, I mean, what's the point of being intimidated? It's like,
It sounds good on paper, but we got to figure out how to do that.
yeah, but like you said, one of the best ways to avoid being intimidated by anybody is building self-confidence. The only way to build self-confidence is putting in the work and the homework and being prepared,
Yeah,
because, there's no reason for you to be nervous or intimidated if you're prepared, because you already know what you're going to do.
it's so true. I'm going to take this in a different direction for a second. Obviously, we go to the gym, right? Work out. When I am working out, I am mentally preparing myself for the day. That's why I always work out in the
Mm.
morning. Just my
Mm.
jam. I work out at night, they're different things, but I go to the gym to mentally get myself ready for the day. So that is one of my confidence builders. Like, all right, I did it. I made it through. I didn't die. And I'm ready now to be successful. And I walk out of there ready to go. So I only say that because everybody has different things they probably do. You have to put yourself in that headspace, and it's hard to stay there. Don't get me wrong. I've had plenty of headspace days, but you you know this. Um, but you have to get yourself in that headspace. And when I finally, when I get to work, my day is work. Let's go. Let's go.
Mhm.
Um, And that will build your confidence. Even if you're selling $200,000 houses, the fact that people are calling you because they trust you, that's a confidence boost. So use it, you know? So,
Absolutely. And the gym thing, I mean, that's such a huge point because there's a couple reasons why it's a big point. I mean, one, you're practicing self-discipline with yourself, right? You're
yep.
showing up and doing something don't want to do that's difficult, and you do that over a period of time. That in itself will build self-confidence. Two, you then become a walking self-advertisement of that self-discipline because you're
Yeah.
well put together, you're in
Yep.
shape, and people recognize that because in a large transaction, they want someone that they know is disciplined, and that's a walking example of discipline. And three, it just builds that mental toughness of
Hmm.
showing up every day. So I'm the opposite. That's how I end my day. So like I go through my entire day with all that nonsense. And then when I have all the rage built up,
Then
then
you
I let it out.
will lift
Yeah.
heavy.
Yeah. Then I let it out for an hour, hour and a half, throw some heavy stuff around. And that's how I end my day. So whether it's how you start your day or end your day, it's
And
incredibly
it
important.
might not even be that, but there is, I will say this too. There is something to be said for, you know, look good, play good type thing. So when you look, whatever your look good is, by the way, I don't, everybody's, but whatever makes you feel confident in that,
Hmm.
that will translate. And I've had days where I'm like, I'm not feeling like I'm looking so good today. And it just brings you right down. You just kind of want to hide. You don't want people to see you. You don't feel comfortable. So I know that's a physical thing, but it definitely plays a major role in the confidence part, at least.
Oh yeah. You look good, you feel good, you play good.
Yep.
Simple as that. Right. So
So
those are kind of the main points I wanted to hit. Any other advice you give for an agent out there that's trying to get kickstarted and get some business going? Because I know it's tough right now.
it's tough right now. You have to grind. This is not a silver platter thing. It's just not. I know we've had the market where there was a little bit of that going on. We're just like, oh my gosh, it's a feeding frenzy of, of activity. But this is a full-time job. You have to take this as seriously as anything else in your life. So I am very, very dedicated to my career. And when I first started, I came in with the mindset of that too. Like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. I'm all in. And so you have to be all in because your clients will know that. And even if you're brand new, don't have a single listing, you don't have a single buyer, people don't know that unless that's what you put out there.
Hmm.
So people are only going to see what you put out there. That's why on social media, we all look like superstars, right?
Yeah,
We all
right.
have new listings, and because that's what we put out there. I don't put out the fact that I just lost a deal and I want to go crawl under a rock,
Yeah.
because that's not what I want people to see. So you have to just, every day is a grind, but you got to get up and do it.
Yeah. You literally have to embrace it, right? Like that one quote that I sent you the other day, it's you have to embrace it. You have to embrace the volatility, the difficulty, and everything else. So,
Yep.
I mean, everyone's looking for the path of least resistance, right? And there's tons of brokerage out there trying to sell you the dream, right? And
Yep.
say, hey, join our brokerage. We'll give you this, we'll give you that. You don't have to cold call, whatever. Whatever's going on, no matter whether the market's up, down, whatever, the only thing you can rely on is your skill set, your discipline, and what you're doing on a daily basis. And really, to judge whether or not you had a successful week, you should ask yourself these three questions at the end of every week. Did I set an appointment? Did I attend an appointment? Did I get a listing contract signed? Did I get a buyer contract signed? Or did I get a purchase agreement signed? So, did I set an appointment? Did I attend an appointment? Did I get a contract signed? If you didn't do any of those three things in 1 week, in 40 hours, then what did
That's
we
a
do?
problem. Yeah, that's a problem. And I think that's where, like I said, this is a full-time job. And I know
Mhm.
this is cliche because we've heard this a million times, but every time we close a deal, we're basically jobless. you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
like, I just lost my job. Great. You are your own, money maker here. This is a lifestyle.
Mhm.
And some people always say, I get this a lot. How do you do this with these hours and you're up till 10 o'clock at night? And not everybody does that. But I get to go to my kid's baseball game. You have to make it fit your life. And when you do that, it becomes really easy to commit, because then it's like, oh yeah, I can commit to that. I can do that. But I just think it is something that when you come into this, especially in this industry, you have to be ready for the bumps. There's bumps and we all have experienced them. You have to be ready to ride them out, and they are tough sometimes. Some are tougher than others, but then there's also the side where it's like, wow, that was an amazing transaction or an amazing client or amazing other agent. So you have to be prepared for all of that.
Yeah. Well, as you know, the more successful you become, the problems don't dissipate. They increase with the amount. It just you just have greater resources and capacity to deal with them.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah, right.
Sometimes I don't.
Yes.
But what's funny is that you're spot on. The other thing is, and I've I attended a course so many years ago. Mark Leader, he was awesome, and he always said, "Do not count your commission before closing. Don't
Yeah.
think about it. Don't even sniff that way." And I have never ever looked at the money that I'm going to make off of a deal. Um, and even after I close it, I don't. I kind of just,
Yeah.
it goes in the magical bank account, and I'm like, cool, it's there. But the main reason is if that becomes your purpose for doing what you're doing, and that's your main focus, you're not focusing on the right things. You're focusing on yourself, money. You're not focusing on building a bigger thing. It's just that one single transaction versus building something that's going to turn into more,
Yep.
So,
Yep. Good stuff. I love it. So we covered a bunch of stuff.
yeah,
Hope you guys enjoyed it and be on the lookout for more stuff because there's always more stuff coming your way. So get after that. Go get a contract signed and go make some money.
make some money.